want to make some fall home decor, but you waited too long, and now all you can find at Dollar Tree is the Halloween or the things they already started putting out for Christmas? Well, you're in luck, because today we are going to make 7 projects using items that you can find at home or run out into nature and find. Hi, my name is Leslie, and welcome to Happy Tuesday, where we do crafts and DIYs and home decor and more. Now, I'm going to give you a little tip. If you stay to the very end, I'll show you some items that you'll need for next week's projects, and also maybe a couple of items that you'll want to pick up as you see them for Christmas. So, let's get started. Let's get started with project number 1. It's a loofah pumpkin. So you'll need a loofah and a stick or twig and some spray paint color of your choice. So you're going to take that loofah outside and spray paint it whatever color. The next thing I did was to wrap this cord around inside the middle of the pumpkin. It was a little bit difficult to find it, and the pumpkin was still a little bit sticky from spray painting it. And then I'm going to glue that in there so it's nice and hidden and we won't see it again. It's also a good point to be able to put our twig stem in. So I hot glued that twig stem into the center of that loofah. Making sure that there's plenty of hot glue around it so that it stays in there. And then I'm going to find some leaves to put in mine. Now, I had some leaves sitting around in my craft stuff, but if you don't have any, you could make some with construction paper or maybe felt if you have that around. And then I just glued those in there with some hot glue. And then this project is complete. All right, let's get started with project number 2. This one's going to be a quick and easy one. First, you're going to need a roll of toilet paper. You're going to need some scrap fabric. I happen to buy this at the Dollar Tree, but any scrap fabric in whatever color you want your pumpkin to be will work great. A twig or some scrap brown paper to make a stem. So the first thing we're going to do is unroll this scrap of fabric, and we are going to set that roll of toilet paper right in the center. This is a quick and easy one. We're going to just fold over that fabric and put it inside the center of that toilet paper roll and go all the way around until we get it in. Now, some pumpkins I've seen you can put some extra fluffing around the outside to make it a little bit more round, or you can unroll some of the toilet paper and make it a little bit more round that way, but I wanted to be able to put this on the back of my toilet and actually use it if need be. So I took this twig and I broke it off to try to make a stem, but I didn't like the way it sat in there. It was a little too small and a little loose, and so I decided to take this scrap brown paper that I had hanging around and twist it all up and make a stem out of this. Now, if you don't have any brown scrap paper hanging around, you could either use a brown paper sack or something along that line to make your stem. After I completed that stem and kind of twisted it around until I liked it, I found some leaves to add into this pumpkin just to give it that final touch. And I didn't glue those in because I wanted to be able to take them out again if I wanted to use that roll of toilet paper. Then I took some raffia and I just wrapped it around my brown paper stem and tied it into a shoelace bow, and then this project was complete. Let's move on to project number 3. We are going to be making a pine cone pumpkin. So you'll see all the supplies that you need right here. We need some pine cones. We need a stem. I've got some twigs. We need some paint, whatever color you want your pumpkin to be, and then pieces for embellishments. Now you'll notice that I'm picking some of these little pieces out of the pine cone so that I can break it down to a size that looks like a nice pumpkin. Those little pieces I want you to save until Christmas because we're going to do something with them then. I'm using orange, which is pumpkin colored chalk paint by Waverly, but you can use whatever color you want your pumpkin to be that goes with your decor. I want you to paint that pumpkin all the way around and inside the little grooves until you get it covered the way you want to. Once you've got that all good and painted the way you want it, then you're going to take one of those pieces of twig and you're going to hot glue that onto the top of that pine cone pumpkin. And then after we complete this and the stem is set good, we are going to take whatever things you have hanging around to embellish that pumpkin. I happen to like this little piece of scrap green fabric I had to make kind of a faux leaf look. Once I have that tied around the stem the way I want it and trimmed down to the size I like it, then I'm going to grab some of this pitberry garland and I'm going to make some tendrils out of it to put around the stem of that pumpkin. I like to use either a paintbrush or a pen to wrap that pitberry garland around to make those tendrils. It makes it a nice tight look. You can make it as tight or as loose as you want it. And after you get those wrapped around and glued on, this project is complete.
If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I wanted to give a special welcome to those new subscribers and an extra shout out to those that came over from Kat's channel. If you don't know who my daughter Kat is, go check out her channel. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell so that you get notified of all my future videos.
Next, we are going to venture off into project number 4. We are going to be making a cork pumpkin. This project will need 24 corks, and I'm standing them all up so I can paint the ends of them the color that I want them, which is pumpkin colored chalk paint by Waverly. You could paint them any color you wish to match with your decor. Once you get all of them painted and maybe a second coat as needed, you're going to start gluing them together with hot glue. Now, this is going to require that you put 4 on the bottom, 5 on the next row, 6 on the middle row, and then go backwards from there. Make sure you get plenty of glue on the sides and the bottom of each of those corks so that they stick together well and won't come apart later. Now for glue, I like to use Gorilla Glue in my hot glue gun, and you'll also notice over to the side there I have a pink silicone mat that I bought at Dollar Tree. Once you have all of that glued together and at the size you want it, then I took a champagne cork and cut that in half. I found some scrap leaves that were left over from some previous project, glued those on, and then glued on that cork top. I made a bow out of raffia and glued that on, and this project is complete. Let's get going on project number 5. The first thing you're going to do is have some type of leaf cut out. Now I made this one from the internet and printed it out on a piece of copy paper and then cut the leaf out. The next thing I'm going to be doing is using blue painter's tape instead of using my Cricut to do this. That way, if you don't have a Cricut, you can do this too. So I am going to trace this out on the blue painter's tape, and once I get it all traced out, then I'm going to grab a sharp edge and I am going to go over all of my lines until I get the whole pumpkin trimmed out. Once I've got that trimmed out, I am going to stick this onto my mason jar. Now I'm using a large mason jar, but you could use any size you wish. And then I'm going to take this satin paint, spray paint, and I am going to spray the entire jar a good coat. It did take me 2 coats. Once that's all done, then I'm going to remove that tape leaf and I am going to start embellishing my project. Just as an added note, when I made that blue painter's tape leaf, I also, on one trial of it, I took the tape off of the mat and cut it out with a pair of scissors. Now I'm gluing on a twine bow, and then I am going to show you 2 different ways to decorate this. I used popcorn in the bottom as kind of a filler because I'm going to first put a candle in there. Now I didn't use a real candle. I used one of those electric candles that or battery operated, whatever. And then for the second decorating, I pulled out some stems that I had in my craft supplies. And here we are at project number 6. I think this was one of my favorites because it brought back the nostalgia of covering books. So you're going to need 3 books out of your bookshelf. You're going to need some embellishments and something to write on. Now, if you don't have brown paper sacks, you can use the brown craft paper from Dollar Tree, or you could use the inside of a roll of wrapping paper. Now, this was a little bit thicker, so I chose to not use that. And I just went to my local grocery store and asked for 3 brown paper sacks, and they gave them to me. So, once we are ready to start, we're going to cut out the bottom of those. Now here you can see some of the other things that I grabbed. Those were to just give you some options in case you don't have a Cricut. And here are some of the embellishments that I grabbed out of my craft stash as well. The first thing that we're going to do to get started is to cut out the bottom of this paper sack. Now, when I was in school, sometimes they would give us book covers to wrap our books in. But if not, we had to use paper sacks. And this is actually how I wrapped my books when I was in school. And I believe we had to wrap our books all the way through high school. Of course, that's been a long time ago. Well, a few years anyway. So here I am cutting out the bottom of that bag. And once I've got that all cut out, then I'm going to measure how much of it that I need for this book, and then I'm going to cut that to size. Once that's cut to size, then I'm going to measure where the book sits, and you're going to want to make sure any grocery store logo is facing the inside of the book, and then I'm going to trim it down. Now, to wrap the books the way we learned, you're going to fold both sides to the size of the book. That's why I gave it that little crease on either side. And then we are going to put the book back in there, and we're going to fold it along the side of the book and actually use the pieces to put the book cover inside the little folds. And that way it doesn't need any tape and it sits in there nice and tight and secure. You're going to do this for all 3 books using those brown paper sacks, and this is what you'll have once you're done. Now, to move on from here, how you write the words on there is completely up to you. You could use stickers or markers. I'm choosing to use my Cricut. So here's where you're going to see I'm putting out some of my embellishments so I know where I want those stickers to go, and I am going to measure the size of my books lengthways and width so that I know exactly what size my letters need to be to fit on there. Now the words that I'm using on my book stack is fall is proof that change is beautiful. Now I use this vinyl from Hobby Lobby, and here you can see I cut out the words, and I just used a couple of different fonts that looked fun to me. And I'm going to cut these into separate little pieces, and then we're going to start weeding. Sometimes when you're weeding, you're going to need to use your weeding tool to help push the letters out onto the carrier sheet, and that way you can make sure that they all end up on that page. Now, as I'm going along, of course, the eyes are kind of tricky and they don't always like to pop out, especially that little dot above the eye, so I'm taking special care with that. And then when I get to the L, it doesn't seem to want to come out either. And you'll notice it's a little crooked, so I'll fix that here in a second. I'm also going to need to take out all the centers of each of those O's and P's and A's so that you can clearly see the letter. Once I get all that done, then I am going to get out my transfer tape. Now for this project, I am using that Dollar Tree contact paper because it is less sticky, so it's not going to rip off the paper off those books when I get this set down on there. Now I'm going to get this transfer tape all stuck onto my words, and I'm going to push that down with my little tool, and you'll notice I did it a little bit too hard on that F, and so I'm having to go back in with my weeding tool and fix that, and then I'll do both sides so that it's nice and secure onto that transfer tape, and then I'll pull that off, making sure all the letters and pieces come with it, and stick it on the edge of my book. Push that down really good and make sure all the letters stay, and then pull off that transfer tape, and I'll do that for each of the 3 books, and there you'll see they're all done. Now we're going to embellish the book stack, and I am using some of this orange burlap ribbon that I bought at the Dollar Tree. I just happened to have it hanging around, and I thought that would be a good look. And then I'll also take some twine that I had, and I'll wrap that around, and then I will give it a little bit more extra pizzazz with a few other embellishments, and then I will be done. Here's the raffia bow that I'm going to put on, and then I'll embellish it with a few silk leaves that I found with my craft stuff, and then we are complete. And here we are at our final project, number 7. And you will need a frame. You can use any frame you want, any size frame. And if it doesn't happen to have this little tag thing on it, then these steps you won't need to do. I unscrewed it, and then I took some Dollar Tree speckle and I stuck it in those holes, and I will let that dry real quick, and then I'll sand it smooth so that I can paint it. Now I'm going to use that pumpkin chalk paint by Waverly, but again, you can use any color that you want. Now to match my outside of my pumpkin, I'm also going to be using a piece of orange cardstock. This particular cardstock has a little bit of texture to it, although you can't see it here in the video. But if you don't have cardstock, you could use any orange colored paper or any colored paper to match the color that you'll paint the outside edges, or construction paper if you have that hanging around. And then I am going to paint the outside of the frame. I'm also going to get the inside edge and the outside edge so that every surface is covered and looks the most like a pumpkin. Once all that has a good coat of paint on it, and just for reference, I only needed to put one coat of paint on this. That chalk paint gave it a good cover. I am going to cut out my piece of orange cardstock to match the inside of the frame, just using that piece of paper that came out of it when I took the frame apart. And we are going to take some of my brown ink that I get from Hobby Lobby and a stiff bristle brush and give this cardstock a little bit of dimension so that it kind of looks like the curves on a pumpkin. And once I get that looking the way I like it, I will put this cardstock inside the frame, glass first, and then the cardstock and that paper and the back of the frame. You'll notice it does have that little kickstand, so it'll sit up. And once I've got that done, I decided that it needed a little bit more interest, and so I took that brown ink pad and I rubbed it up against the edges, giving it more of a little rustic look to it. The next thing I'm going to do is to get my little twig stem, and I'm going to find a couple of leaves to go with it and glue that up on top of the frame. Again, if you don't have leaves, you could make something, or you could use some scrap fabric like I did on a previous pumpkin. I'm going to add some pipberry garland to make some little tendrils, and that will finish off my pumpkin. I think it turned out super cute, and it was very easy to make. And here we are, all completed. And let's give one final look to all 7 very cute and easy projects.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed my time together. Now before we leave, remember I told you if you stayed to the end, I would give you a special hint about next week's video. So next week we are going to make items that you can easily transform from fall to Christmas. And some of the items that you're going to want to keep a lookout for are 2 of these pumpkin wreath forms, this little car chamois, one of these wooden planks, 2 of these glass jars, actually candle holder vase things, some harvest decor pieces, and this rectangle falling leaves rolling pin sort of thing. Also, as they start putting out Christmas, if you'll keep your eye out for a couple of things that we're going to need for some of the Christmas things coming up, you'll want to buy some of these gingerbread. They go pretty quick. You'll also want to buy one of these DIY Santa kits, some small white pom-poms, and some white paint in this big jar. So, again, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Happy Tuesday!